Dwayne Johnson, celebrated as one of America's most iconic and beloved figures, was enjoying a quiet evening at a cozy local restaurant when an unexpected turn of events changed everything. What unfolded next was so extraordinary that it left everyone stunned beyond belief. Let us know where you're watching from. If you admire the righteous characters in this story, give us a thumbs up and subscribe now. On a calm New Year's evening, while most people were enjoying the holiday festivities, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson found himself in a reflective mood. The lively streets were buzzing with chatter and laughter, and the crisp winter air, tinged with warmth from glowing streetlights, brought a comforting sense of serenity to him. As he walked along the bustling avenue, the energy of the city filled him with a quiet joy. The night before, Dwayne had received an unexpected call from a business partner. It was about one of the restaurants in his chain, where concerns had been raised regarding the quality of service. The conversation lingered in his mind. Known for his relentless pursuit of excellence, Dwayne knew he couldn't ignore it. Determined to uncover the truth, he decided he would visit the establishment himself, not as a celebrity owner, but as a regular guest. To ensure his visit would yield honest insights, Dwayne devised a clever plan. That night, he would go in disguise, blending in as a casual diner. He carefully chose a simple outfit, one that wouldn't draw attention: a dark hoodie, a pair of jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His towering frame might still attract a few glances, but he was ready to play the part. With curiosity and resolve fueling him, Dwayne stepped through the restaurant's doors. Greeted by the warm glow of its interior, he quietly sat in the corner, observing every detail, from the staff's demeanor to the quality of the food served. Tonight wasn't about stardom. It was about understanding and improving the experience for his patrons. Little did he know, the night would unfold in unexpected ways. The glow of warm light spilled out from the restaurant's gleaming glass windows, illuminating the street outside like a beacon. Through the crystal-clear panes, one could glimpse elegant chandeliers hanging gracefully from the high ceiling, casting a soft, golden radiance across the room. Gentle murmurs of laughter and conversation floated from impeccably dressed patrons, each seated at neatly arranged tables adorned with fine linens and sparkling glassware. Everything about the place spoke of sophistication, exclusivity, and prestige. This was Square one of the most luxurious and renowned restaurants in the city, celebrated for its grandeur and exceptional service. Yet tonight, Dwayne Johnson wasn't here to make a grand entrance or bask in admiration. He wasn't dressed in his usual tailored suits or stepping out with the poise of a Hollywood star. No, this evening, he chose simplicity. Clad in a plain hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, Dwayne had shed the trappings of his fame and fortune. His intention was clear: to blend in, observe, and truly experience the restaurant as an ordinary guest. As he approached the entrance, he paused for a brief moment, catching his reflection in the polished glass door. The contrast between his unassuming attire and the opulence of the scene behind the door was striking. But he wasn't here for appearances. Taking a deep breath, he pulled open the door and stepped inside. Maria, the epitome of professionalism with her crisp uniform and polished demeanor, moved swiftly to greet the latest arrival. Her practiced smile was in place, but as her gaze landed on the man standing near the entrance, she hesitated. He was tall, imposingly so, and dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, an outfit that clashed harshly with the refined elegance of the restaurant. Her thoughts betrayed her well-trained exterior. What on earth is he doing here? This is a fine dining establishment, not a street corner cafe. We cater to the elite. Not. Her mind left the thought unfinished, but the disdain lingered. With a slight stiffness to her smile, Maria approached him. "How may I assist you?" she asked, her tone polite but laced with a subtle sharpness. As she spoke, her eyes flitted to his face, catching the dark complexion and rugged features that, to her, seemed out of place in this pristine environment. "I'd like to reserve a table for tonight," the man responded evenly. His voice was calm and steady, with a quiet confidence that caught her off guard. Maria felt a flicker of unease. There was something about his presence, an aura of self-assurance that didn't fit her immediate assumption of him. No, she thought, dismissing her instincts. That can't be right. A man dressed like that, looking like that, doesn't belong here. Feigning politeness, she asked, "Do you have a reservation, sir?" Her tone carried the faintest trace of condescension, subtle enough to sound courteous, but sharp enough to be felt. She had already decided he didn't. "No, I don't," the man replied, unbothered by her demeanor. His patience and composure only irritated Maria further. Of course he didn't, she thought. People like him never do. Hiding her annoyance behind a strained smile, she straightened her posture. "Let me check if we have any available tables for tonight," she said curtly, already anticipating the awkward moment when she'd have to tell him they were fully booked. She walked away briskly, trying to suppress her frustration at what she saw as an unwelcome disruption to the restaurant's refined atmosphere. As Maria moved towards the reservation desk, she couldn't help but glance back. The man had taken a seat in the waiting area, his presence as calm and collected as before. Who does he think he is? Walking in here like that, she muttered under her breath. She was certain that this man, with his casual clothes and unpolished appearance, didn't belong in the world of luxury and fine dining. What she didn't realize, however, was that tonight would turn into a lesson she would never forget. I'll seat him somewhere that matches his pathetic appearance. He'll see where he really belongs soon enough, Maria thought to herself as her eyes flicked toward the man once more. Her expression remained composed, but there was no mistaking the disdain in her glance. Straightening her uniform, she adopted a stiff, professional tone. "This way, sir," she said, gesturing curtly for him to follow. With a calculated pace, Maria led the man through the restaurant. She avoided the grand, well-lit section adorned with luxurious chandeliers and elegant seating arrangements. Instead, she steered him toward the far corner, near the bustling kitchen doors. This area was far from the refined dining experience the restaurant prided itself on. The noise of clattering plates, the sharp bark of kitchen staff, and the constant traffic of servers passing through created a stark contrast to the serene atmosphere on the other side. Stopping at a small table tucked into the corner, Maria gestured to it with a forced smile. "This is the only table we have available tonight," she said crisply. Her tone made it clear that she expected no objections. The man didn't react to the less-than-stellar seating or the dismissive tone. Instead, he offered a polite smile and a quiet, steady, "Thank you." There was no trace of irritation or discomfort in his response, which only unsettled Maria further. What's with him? Why isn't he embarrassed or upset? She wondered, slightly thrown off by his calm demeanor. As Maria stepped away, she stole one last glance at the man as he settled into his seat. Something was unnerving about the way he carried himself, an unspoken authority that she couldn't quite place. But she quickly dismissed the thought, reassuring herself that her assumption had been right. "People like him don't belong here," she muttered under her breath as she walked back toward the main dining area. Little did she know, this quiet, unassuming man was about to shatter every judgment she had made. With practiced professionalism, Maria approached the table, her every move calculated and precise. The gleaming glass of water she carried was placed in front of the man with a soft clink. Her polished smile remained intact as she handed him the leather-bound menu, but her thoughts betrayed her outward calm. What's someone like him even doing here? There's no way he knows how to order in a place like this. Maybe he'll ask for a cheap beer or something basic. Too bad we don't serve anything low-end here. She lingered, subtly observing his every move, her sharp eyes searching for any sign of hesitation. She had seen this scenario before. Someone out of their depth fumbling through the menu, unsure of how to navigate the refined choices or the steep prices. She was certain this man, with his plain clothes and unassuming demeanor, would fit the same mold. Her judgment was unshakable. Once he realizes he's out of his league, he'll make some excuse and leave. People like him always do. But her confidence in her assumptions began to falter when the man looked up, his expression calm and composed. Without a hint of hesitation, he spoke in a deep, steady voice that carried an air of quiet authority. "I'll have the Wagyu steak, medium rare, with the truffle butter sauce," he said. "Pair that with a vintage Bordeaux, something bold and well-aged. I trust your recommendation on the year." For a moment, Maria froze, her carefully constructed mask almost slipping. The Wagyu steak was the crown jewel of the menu, the most expensive dish by far. The truffle butter sauce was an exquisite accompaniment, and the Bordeaux he requested was among the most luxurious wines in their cellar. "Is this some kind of joke?" she thought, her mind racing. "How does someone like him even know to order that? Does he have any idea how much this will cost?" She quickly recovered, forcing a tight smile as she responded, "Excellent choice, sir," she said, though her tone carried a sharpness she couldn't completely hide. "Let's see how this plays out," she thought bitterly. "He's probably just trying to impress someone. I'd like to see his face when he gets the check." Turning away, Maria carried the order to the kitchen, her thoughts swirling with a mix of irritation and disbelief. She couldn't help but glance back at him, sitting calmly at the table as if he belonged there. Who does he think he's fooling? That air of confidence can't be real. He'll crack eventually. As she moved through the elegant dining room, her irritation deepened. She prided herself on being able to read people, to quickly assess who they were and where they belonged. This man, with his unpolished appearance, defied her every expectation. He didn't fit into the carefully crafted world of luxury and refinement that she worked so hard to uphold. And yet, there he sat her day unbothered, his calm demeanor almost mocking her assumptions. Maria pushed the thought aside as she returned to her duties, determined to prove herself right. In her mind, there was no way someone like him belonged in a place like this. What she didn't realize was that this man, so unassuming and composed, was about to challenge everything she thought she knew about class, appearances, and the true meaning of belonging. Maria returned to the table, her polished exterior intact, but her tone carried a subtle sharpness as she prepared to deliver what she thought was a perfectly crafted blow. "Let's see how he reacts to this," she thought, her sense of superiority fueling her every step. "Sir," she began, her voice formal but edged with condescension, "I regret to inform you that the Wagyu steak is no longer available tonight." She paused, letting the words settle, though her tone betrayed no genuine regret. In fact, her words seemed calculated to challenge him. "Perhaps," she added, her lips curling into a faint, dismissive smile, "you'd prefer to choose something else, something more fitting." Her eyes flickered over his simple attire, making her implication clear without saying it outright. Dwayne Johnson's face remained calm, though his silence carried a weight that Maria couldn't quite place. He didn't flinch or show any sign of discomfort, much to her frustration. Instead, he simply leaned forward slightly, his expression neutral but with a subtle intensity that made her second-guess herself for the briefest of moments. "All right," he said finally, his tone steady and deliberate, as if he were testing her. "I'll have the lobster risotto with a glass of your finest white wine." His words were calm, but there was no mistaking the authority in his voice. Maria blinked, momentarily thrown off by his unwavering confidence. The lobster risotto was one of the restaurant's most exclusive dishes, paired only with their top-tier wine list. Her initial assumption of him faltered ever so slightly. How does he know to order that? Is he guessing? Or does he actually understand the menu? She wondered, but she quickly shook the thought away. "Of course," she said, her tone clipped, forcing a smile as she nodded. "I'll place your order." But as she turned to leave, her thoughts simmered with irritation. Let's see if he can afford this when the bill comes. He's just pretending. There's no way he belongs here. Meanwhile, Dwayne sat quietly, watching her retreat with a calm exterior. But beneath his composed demeanor, he felt a growing sense of resolve. So the call was right, he thought. This is how they treat people they think are beneath them. Let's see how far this will go. Maria, unaware of who she was dealing with, dismissed the growing unease in the back of her mind. Tonight, she thought, would play out just as she expected. Little did she know, the man sitting at the corner table was about to turn her world upside down. Maria approached the table with a barely concealed smirk, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal the disdain simmering underneath. She had no intention of hiding it anymore. Why waste the effort, she thought, as she prepared to deliver her carefully chosen words. "Sir," she began, her tone carrying an unmistakable air of superiority, "I regret to inform you that the Wagyu steak is not available tonight." She paused for effect, leaning in slightly as her voice dropped into something colder, sharper, and frankly, "Someone like you, I doubt you'd even appreciate it if it were." The Rock didn't flinch, his calm, steady demeanor only fueling her irritation. She decided to press further. "You see," she continued with a mocking smile, "this is a fine dining establishment, an exclusive place for a certain kind of clientele. Perhaps," she added, gesturing vaguely towards the entrance, "you'd feel more at home grabbing something from the street vendors outside. I hear the hot dogs are very affordable." Maria stepped back slightly, folding her arms and watching him closely, expecting him to stumble over his response. In her mind, she'd already won this exchange. Let him realize he's out of his league and leave, she thought. He doesn't belong here, and it's better if he knows it now. Dwayne's face remained unreadable as he absorbed her words, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, a flicker of something unreadable glinting behind them. The silence stretched just long enough to make Maria shift uncomfortably, though she quickly recovered, doubling down on her stance. "Sir, with all due respect," she added, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "we have a reputation to maintain here. Perhaps next time, you should consider a place more fitting for your style." The Rock leaned back in his chair slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You know," he said, "I'm starting to think this restaurant's reputation isn't nearly as high as you seem to believe." Maria blinked, caught off guard by his composed response. He didn't raise his voice or show any sign of anger, but the weight behind his words left her momentarily speechless. "Let's continue," Dwayne added, his voice still calm, but now carrying a distinct edge. "I'm curious to see just how far this will go." Maria's confidence wavered, though she quickly masked it with a tight smile. She nodded curtly, muttering something about checking the kitchen, and turned to leave. But as she walked away, her mind raced. Who does he think he is? Talking like that? He's just bluffing. There's no way someone like him can back it up. Unbeknownst to her, she had just set the stage for an unforgettable lesson, not just for her, but for the entire restaurant. Maria approached the table with the lobster risotto and a glass of vintage white wine, the aromas of the finely prepared meal wafting through the room. Her steps were confident, but her intentions were far from genuine. The earlier exchange had only cemented her disdain for the man sitting at the corner table. To her, he was nothing more than an outsider trying to pretend he belonged in a world far above him. As she neared his table, her grip on the tray seemed to falter. Whether it was a genuine mistake or something more deliberate, the tray tilted abruptly. In a single moment, the risotto and wine crashed to the floor, the sound of shattering glass cutting through the low hum of the restaurant. Conversations came to an abrupt halt as heads turned toward the commotion. Maria stepped back, placing a hand over her mouth in an exaggerated show of surprise. "Oh no," she said, her voice carrying more mockery than apology. Then, with a sharp edge in her tone, she added, loud enough for the surrounding diners to hear, "I suppose it's fitting. Someone like you seems better suited to eating off the floor than sitting on our leather chairs." Her words hung in the air, heavy with malice. The nearby guests exchanged awkward glances, their discomfort palpable. A few murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room, but Maria stood firm, clearly satisfied with the scene she had created. She folded her arms, her smirk tugging at the corners of her lips as if daring the man to respond. The man remained seated, his expression unreadable, calm, and composed. He glanced briefly at the mess on the floor before lifting his gaze to meet Maria's. There was no anger, no visible reaction to her words, only a steady, piercing look that made her shift slightly where she stood. "Is that so?" he said finally, his voice low and even, carrying an unexpected weight that silenced the room further. Maria faltered for a brief moment, but quickly masked her hesitation with a dismissive shrug. "Well," she said, her voice turning shrill again, "we all have our place, don't we? Perhaps this one just isn't for you." The man leaned back slightly in his chair, his calm demeanor unshaken. He didn't raise his voice or show any hint of frustration, but his presence alone seemed to unsettle Maria. The silence stretched, thick with tension, as the room watched, waiting for his next move. Finally, he said, "You know, I came here tonight with an open mind. I wanted to see what this place is really about. And now," he paused, his gaze unwavering, "I think I've seen enough." Maria stood by the table, her arms crossed, no longer even pretending to hide her disdain. Her earlier remarks had already drawn a few uncomfortable glances from nearby diners, but this time, she decided to double down, her voice sharper and louder, as if she wanted to ensure everyone in the restaurant could hear her. "Look," she began, her tone dripping with contempt, "I think it's time to be honest here. A place like this isn't meant for someone like you. You stick out like a sore thumb. The clothes, the way you carry yourself, it's all wrong. And frankly," she leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering as if sharing some twisted piece of advice, "you should be grateful I even let you sit down at all." She straightened, a cruel smile spreading across her face. "You see, Square One isn't just any restaurant. We cater to people who belong here, people who've earned the right to sit in these seats. And let's face it," she gestured vaguely toward him, her eyes narrowing, "you don't exactly scream elite. You'd be better off grabbing something from the food trucks outside or, better yet, finding a seat on the curb where you belong." Her words hit like daggers, loud enough to echo across the dining room. Nearby diners exchanged uneasy looks, some clearly shocked but unsure whether to intervene, while others simply pretended not to hear, burying themselves in their meals. "And another thing," Maria continued, her confidence swelling as she saw no immediate reaction from the man before her. "Let's not pretend this is just about your clothes. It's not. People like you," she emphasized the words with a sneer, her gaze lingering on his skin tone and features, "don't belong in places like this. This is a space for class, elegance, and refinement, not for whatever it is you think you bring to the table." Dwayne Johnson, seated calmly throughout her tirade, remained silent. His face was unreadable, but his eyes never left hers. There was no anger, no outburst, just a calm, steady gaze that seemed to pierce right through her. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating, and for the first time, Maria felt a flicker of discomfort. "What?" she snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. "Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you're realizing I'm right. Honestly, you should be thanking me for telling you the truth. You don't belong here, and the sooner you accept that, the better." Finally, Dwayne leaned forward slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken despite her vile words. His voice, when he spoke, was low and steady, carrying an authority that silenced the entire room. "Are you done?" he asked, his tone so composed it was almost unnerving. Maria blinked, momentarily thrown off by the simplicity of his response. She opened her mouth to speak, but he continued before she could find her words. "I've heard enough," he said, his voice still calm but with a sharp edge that made her shrink back slightly. "You've made it perfectly clear who doesn't belong here. And trust me, it's not me." The quiet power in his words rippled through the room, and Maria's confidence wavered visibly. Whispers spread among the diners, their attention now squarely on her. Her face flushed as she realized the shift in energy, no longer a judgment of the man she had targeted, but of her own behavior. For the first time, she felt exposed, not as a professional server, but as someone who had crossed a line she could never cross. The tension in the restaurant was palpable. Maria stood rooted in place, her smirk fading as she tried to gauge the unyielding expression on Dwayne Johnson's face. His calm demeanor had unnerved her, but she dismissed it, doubling down on her contempt. For Maria, this was just another attempt to humiliate someone she thought was beneath her, a game she believed she had already won. But then, the unthinkable happened. As the murmurs among the diners grew louder, the door to the kitchen swung open, and the restaurant's general manager, Mr. Harper, walked briskly toward the scene. His face was pale, his steps hurried, and his usual calm professionalism seemed to have evaporated. All eyes turned to him, and Maria glanced over her shoulder, confused by the sudden commotion. The man she had ridiculed, humiliated, and openly insulted wasn't just another guest. He wasn't even someone she could dismiss as a passing nobody. He was Dwayne Johnson, the owner of Square One, the very establishment she prided herself on representing. Mr. Harper, the general manager, stood beside her, his jaw tight with anger and disbelief. The words he had just spoken, "He's the owner of this restaurant," echoed in her mind like a gavel striking in judgment. Maria's hands trembled as she glanced at Dwayne, whose calm yet piercing gaze cut through her defenses like a blade. There was no anger in his expression, no shouting or theatrical display, but his silence spoke volumes. It was the kind of quiet that made the room feel heavier, the kind that demanded accountability without saying a word. "Maria," Mr. Harper snapped, his voice sharp and reprimanding. "What on earth were you thinking? How dare you speak to anyone like that, let alone him?" I didn't know," Maria stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize." "You didn't realize?" Harper shot back, his voice rising. "You didn't think for 1 second that maybe, just maybe, the person you were tearing down was someone who deserved respect, no matter who he was." Maria's knees wobbled, and she struggled to find her footing. Her thoughts raced, desperate to form an excuse, an explanation, anything to mitigate the damage she had caused. But no words came. She looked at Dwayne again, her lips trembling. "Mr. Johnson," she finally choked out, tears beginning to pool in her eyes. "I am so sorry. I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I never would have." Dwayne held up a hand, silencing her. "Stop," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You're not apologizing because you feel regret. You're apologizing because you got caught. If I weren't the owner, if I were just another guest, you wouldn't feel the need to say any of this, would you?" Maria opened her mouth to protest, but the truth in his words robbed her of any argument. He was right. She wouldn't have apologized if he'd been anyone else. She would have continued to degrade him, feeling untouchable in her position of perceived power. Dwayne leaned forward, his voice calm but laced with authority. "This isn't about me," he continued. "This is about the way you treat people, the way you look at someone and decide, based on nothing more than their appearance, their clothes, or their skin, whether they belong." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "That kind of behavior has no place here, or anywhere." Maria's tears fell freely now, and she dropped to her knees, clasping her hands together in a desperate plea. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking, "give me another chance. I promise I'll change. I'll do better. I'll prove to you that I can be better. Just don't fire me. I need this job." The other diners watched the scene in stunned silence, their discomfort palpable as they witnessed Maria's public downfall. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Others whispered quietly among themselves. But all eyes remained fixed on Dwayne as they waited for his response. Dwayne stood slowly, his imposing frame casting a shadow over Maria as she knelt before him. He exhaled deeply, his expression calm but resolute. "Maria," he said, his voice carrying the weight of finality, "this isn't about you needing this job. It's about what this job represents. This restaurant is a place where everyone is supposed to feel welcome, where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. You've not only failed to uphold that standard, you've actively worked against it." Maria sobbed quietly, shaking her head. "Please, I can learn. I can change. Just give me a chance." Dwayne shook his head, his voice softening but remaining firm. "This isn't a learning experience for you anymore. The damage is done. Every person in this room saw the way you treated me, not as a person, but as someone you thought didn't deserve to be here. And if they saw it happen to me, what would stop them from wondering if it could happen to them? I can't allow that." He turned to Mr. Harper, who stood frozen, his face a mask of shame and anger. "She's done," Dwayne said firmly, effective immediately. Mr. Harper nodded solemnly, Understood, sir. Maria gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. No, please, she cried, reaching out toward Dwayne. I'll do anything. I'll work harder. I swear. Don't do this to me. But Dwayne didn't waver. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. This isn't something I'm doing to you, he said quietly. This is the result of the choices you made. He stepped back, turning to address the room. To everyone here, he said, his voice strong and steady. I apologize for what you witnessed tonight. This is not what Square One stands for. We're here to provide an inclusive, welcoming experience for every guest, no matter who they are or where they come from. That's my promise to you, and I'll make sure it's upheld. The diners responded with quiet applause, some nodding in approval. Maria, meanwhile, remained on the floor, her tears falling silently as she realized her pleas had fallen on deaf ears. Dwayne turned back to Mr. Harper. Escort her out, he said, his tone final, and make sure the staff knows this kind of behavior will never be tolerated. As Maria was gently but firmly guided out of the restaurant, the weight of her actions pressed down on her fully. She had not only lost her job but had publicly disgraced herself in front of colleagues, patrons, and the owner of the very establishment she had once taken pride in. Dwayne sat back down at his table, his composure returning as he opened the menu. The lesson had been delivered, but the work to rebuild the restaurant's reputation and its soul was just beginning. As the door closed behind Maria, escorted out of the restaurant by Mr. Harper, an uneasy silence lingered in the air. The diners exchanged glances, whispering quietly among themselves, the shock of what they had just witnessed still fresh. Some looked toward Dwayne Johnson, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and respect. Others stared down at their plates, unsure of how to process the events that had unfolded. Dwayne remained seated at his table, his calm demeanor unchanged, though his piercing gaze was now focused on Mr. Harper, who stood nearby, his face pale with tension. The general manager, once so composed, looked visibly shaken. He had witnessed firsthand how deeply the incident had affected the reputation of Square One, a restaurant built on the principles of excellence, inclusivity, and respect. Mr. Johnson, Harper began, his voice trembling slightly. I want to personally apologize for what happened tonight. This behavior is unacceptable. It doesn't reflect the values of this establishment, and it will never happen again. Dwayne leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as he regarded the manager. His voice was calm but firm, each word measured with intent. It's not just about what happened tonight, he said. It's about what allowed it to happen in the first place. This wasn't an isolated incident. It's a reflection of a deeper problem, and we need to address it, not just for tonight's guests, but for everyone who walks through those doors. Harper nodded solemnly, the weight of Dwayne's words settling heavily on him. You're absolutely right, sir, he said. This is on me. I take full responsibility. Dwayne raised a hand to stop him. It's not just about assigning blame, Harper, he said. It's about fixing the culture of this place. Maria's behavior didn't come out of nowhere. Somewhere along the way, the message got lost, what this restaurant stands for, what we believe in. And now, we're going to fix it. The room remained quiet as Dwayne's words carried through the air, resonating not just with Harper, but with the staff who had gathered near the edges of the dining area, their faces tense with guilt and concern. Dwayne gestured toward the staff, his tone firm but constructive. This isn't just about one person, he continued. It's about all of us. Maria's actions tonight were unacceptable, but they're a symptom of a larger problem. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of the values this restaurant was built on, values like respect, kindness, and the idea that every single person who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity. Harper stepped closer, his shoulders straightening as he nodded in agreement. What do you suggest we do, sir? Dwayne paused, his eyes scanning the room. First, he said, Maria will be placed on a blacklist for this restaurant and all associated locations. Her behavior was egregious, and it's not something I'm willing to tolerate. But this isn't just about her. This is about ensuring that something like this never happens again. The staff, now gathered in quiet clusters near the kitchen doors, exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of relief that action was being taken and fear for what it might mean for their own roles. Dwayne's expression softened slightly as he addressed them directly. "I'm not here to punish everyone," he said. "I'm here to make sure we're better for our guests, better for each other, and better for this industry. That starts with education and accountability." Harper leaned in slightly, taking mental notes as Dwayne continued. "Effective immediately. Every staff member, from the servers to the kitchen team to the management, will undergo mandatory training, not just in customer service, but in the principles this restaurant was founded on. We'll focus on empathy, cultural sensitivity, and the importance of treating every guest with respect, no matter who they are or where they come from." One of the servers, a young woman standing near the back of the group, raised her hand tentatively. "Sir," she said, her voice hesitant, "will this include us being able to share feedback about things we've noticed that could be improved?" Dwayne nodded, a small smile breaking through his otherwise serious expression. "Absolutely," he said. "This isn't just about top-down changes. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels heard, respected, and empowered to do their best work. If you see something that needs to change, I want to know about it. No one should ever feel like their voice doesn't matter here." Harper chimed in, his tone resolute. "We'll also be reviewing our policies to ensure there's a clear, zero-tolerance stance on discrimination and disrespect. This will include revisiting our hiring practices, performance evaluations, and even the way we handle customer feedback. From now on, we're not just aiming to meet expectations, we're aiming to exceed them." Dwayne leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto Harper's. "This isn't just about damage control," he said. "It's about setting a standard, not just for this restaurant, but for every establishment in this industry. People look to us as an example of what excellence should be. And from this point on, we're going to make sure we live up to that." Harper nodded firmly, his confidence returning as he absorbed Dwayne's vision for the future. "Consider it done, sir," he said. "I'll personally oversee the training program and ensure these changes are implemented immediately." Dwayne stood, his towering presence commanding attention as he addressed the room one final time. "To everyone here," he said, his voice steady and clear, "I know tonight has been difficult, but it's also an opportunity, a chance to reflect, to learn, and to grow. This restaurant is about more than just food. It's about creating an experience that makes people feel valued, respected, and welcome. That's the standard we're going to hold ourselves to. And it starts right now." The room erupted in quiet applause, a mix of relief and determination spreading among the staff and diners alike. As the tension began to ease, Dwayne nodded toward Harper, signaling the conversation was over. He returned to his seat, picking up the menu once more, ready to enjoy the meal he had come for. For the staff of Square One, the night had been a turning point, one that would forever shape the culture of the restaurant. For Dwayne Johnson, it was a reminder that leadership wasn't just about building businesses. It was about building people, holding them accountable, and helping them rise to their potential. For Maria, it was the end of one chapter and the beginning of a hard lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As the events of the evening unfolded, Jimmy sat quietly at his table, a front-row witness to the drama that had gripped the restaurant. His eyes followed every word, every gesture, and every decisive action taken by Dwayne Johnson. What began as a regular dinner outing had transformed into a masterclass on leadership, humility, and accountability, qualities Jimmy deeply admired but rarely saw executed with such poise. Jimmy was no ordinary diner. He, too, owned a restaurant, albeit a much smaller one compared to the grandeur of Square One. His establishment, nestled in a bustling part of the city, was built on simple principles: great food, genuine service, and creating a sense of community. While his business was doing well, he often found himself struggling with the nuances of managing people and ensuring that his team embodied the same values he held dear. Watching Dwayne handle such a complex and tense situation with grace and authority was nothing short of inspiring. As Maria was escorted out and Dwayne addressed the staff and diners, Jimmy found himself hanging on to every word. It wasn't just what Dwayne said, it was how he said it. There was no yelling, no anger, no grandstanding. Instead, there was a quiet determination in his tone, a commitment to ensuring that Square One would become a better place, not just for its guests, but for everyone who worked there. Jimmy's admiration grew with every passing moment. Dwayne's ability to transform a painful incident into an opportunity for growth was something he aspired to replicate in his own restaurant. He leaned back in his chair, the gears in his mind turning as he considered the possibilities. What if I could work with someone like him? He thought. What if I could bring that same energy and vision to my own business? By the time the dust had settled and the restaurant returned to its normal rhythm, Jimmy had made up his mind. He wasn't just going to admire Dwayne Johnson from afar. He was going to find a way to connect with him. The idea felt bold, maybe even audacious. But Jimmy had always believed that great things required courage. He glanced across the dining room, where Dwayne sat calmly at his table, finally enjoying the meal he had come for. The aura of leadership surrounding him was unmistakable, but so was the warmth he exuded. This wasn't just a celebrity throwing his weight around. This was a man who genuinely cared about people, about values, and about creating something meaningful. That was the kind of partner Jimmy wanted. Jimmy scribbled a few notes on a napkin, outlining what he would say if given the chance to speak with Dwayne. He knew he couldn't just walk up and gush about how much he admired him. He needed a plan, something concrete to offer. His restaurant, while small, was growing steadily. It was gaining recognition for its creative menu and warm, inviting atmosphere. But what if it could be more? What if, with Dwayne's guidance and influence, it could become a beacon of inclusivity and excellence, much like Square One? As the evening wound down, Jimmy saw his chance. Dwayne had finished his meal and was speaking quietly with Mr. Harper near the exit. Gathering his courage, Jimmy stood and approached, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me, Mr. Johnson," he began, his voice steady but laced with nervous energy. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Dwayne turned his expression kind but curious. "Not at all," he said, extending a hand. "And you are?" "Jimmy," he said, shaking Dwayne's hand. "I own a small restaurant here in the city. I was here tonight, and I couldn't help but watch how you handled everything. I just wanted to say that it was incredible. The way you stood up for what you believe in, the way you addressed your team, it was inspiring." Dwayne smiled warmly. "Thank you, Jimmy. That means a lot." Jimmy hesitated for a moment, then pushed forward. "I know this might sound bold, but I've been thinking. I'd love the chance to collaborate with you. I know I'm just a small business owner compared to everything you've built, but I think there's a lot I could learn from you. And maybe, just maybe, we could create something together." Dwayne raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Tell me more," he said, his tone encouraging. Jimmy took a deep breath. "My restaurant is small, but it's built on the same principles you talked about tonight, creating a place where everyone feels welcome, where everyone is treated with respect. But I know there's room for improvement. Watching you tonight made me realize that I want to take it to the next level. I want my team to feel as inspired as yours, and I want my guests to leave with the kind of experience that sticks with them. I think, with your guidance and vision, we could do something truly special." Dwayne considered Jimmy's words, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said after a moment, "I admire the courage it takes to walk up to someone and pitch an idea like that. It tells me you're passionate about what you do and that you care about your people." Jimmy nodded eagerly. "I do, and I know there's so much more I could be doing for them. I just need the right guidance." Dwayne smiled, a glimmer of approval in his eyes. "I can respect that," he said, "but collaboration isn't just about me stepping in and giving advice. It's about aligning values and working toward a shared vision. If we're going to work together, I need to know you're ready to do the hard work." Jimmy's determination shone through as he met Dwayne's gaze. "I'm ready," he said firmly, "whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, Jimmy and Dwayne began a series of conversations, exchanging ideas and discussing ways to improve not only Jimmy's restaurant but the culture within it. Dwayne brought his experience, his vision, and his unwavering commitment to excellence, while Jimmy brought his passion, his creativity, and his willingness to learn. Together, they developed a plan to transform Jimmy's restaurant into a model of inclusivity and excellence. Staff training programs were introduced, focused on empathy, respect, and cultural sensitivity. The menu was refined to reflect the diverse community the restaurant served, and new initiatives were launched to give back to local charities and support underrepresented groups. Word of the collaboration spread quickly, and soon, Jimmy's restaurant was not just a local favorite. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when passion and purpose aligned. For Jimmy, the partnership with Dwayne was more than just a business opportunity. It was the realization of a dream to create something that truly mattered. For Dwayne, it was another step in his lifelong mission to use his influence to uplift others and leave a lasting legacy of positive change. Together, they proved that when values and vision come together, the possibilities are endless. In the months following their initial conversation, Dwayne Johnson and Jimmy discovered that their shared values and passion for excellence created a natural synergy. What began as a casual dinner encounter transformed into a partnership rooted in mutual respect, ambition, and a shared vision for what a restaurant could and should be. Their collaboration quickly blossomed into something much larger: the decision to create a groundbreaking chain of restaurants that combined their unique strengths and perspectives. The idea wasn't just to open another restaurant, it was to build a brand that stood for something greater. Dwayne brought his unparalleled drive, leadership, and influence, while Jimmy contributed his hands-on experience as a restaurateur and his deep understanding of community connections. Together, they wanted to create a space that represented inclusivity, innovation, and quality, where people from all walks of life could come together and feel valued. Sitting down for their first formal planning session, the duo sketched out their vision. "This isn't just about food," Dwayne said, his voice steady with determination. "It's about creating an experience that stays with people long after they leave. I want every person who walks through our doors to feel like they belong, like they're part of something special." Jimmy nodded, his enthusiasm palpable. "We can do that," he said. "We can build something that feels like home for everyone. Great food, great service, and a culture that people want to be part of. But we also need to push boundaries, set a new standard for what dining can be." Their shared excitement fueled long nights of brainstorming, where menus were designed, concepts were refined, and the core values of their brand began to take shape. They decided to name the restaurant chain Unity Table to reflect their commitment to inclusivity and community. Unity Table wasn't just going to be about good food, it was going to stand for something bigger. Dwayne and Jimmy decided early on that every location would have a mission-driven focus. A percentage of profits would be donated to local charities in each community the restaurant served, supporting causes such as hunger relief, education, and cultural initiatives. Each restaurant would also prioritize hiring from underrepresented groups, providing meaningful employment opportunities and fostering a sense of belonging. "We're not just opening restaurants," Dwayne explained during a meeting with their leadership team. "We're building a movement. This is about changing the way people think about dining and about each other." Jimmy, inspired by Dwayne's words, added, "And we're going to make sure that every single person who works with us knows they're part of something important. This isn't just a job, it's a chance to make a difference." The first Unity Table location opened in the heart of the city, drawing an immediate buzz thanks to Dwayne's star power and the unique concept behind the brand. On opening night, the restaurant was packed with guests, including families, professionals, and food enthusiasts from all walks of life. The menu, curated by top chefs under Jimmy's guidance, featured dishes inspired by diverse cultures and cuisines, reflecting the inclusive ethos of the brand. As the night unfolded, Dwayne and Jimmy walked through the restaurant, greeting guests, chatting with staff, and soaking in the atmosphere. The energy was electric, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. "This place feels different," one guest remarked to Jimmy. "It's not just the food. It's the way everyone here treats you like you're part of something special." Jimmy smiled, knowing that was exactly the kind of impact he and Dwayne had hoped to create. Unity Table wasn't just a restaurant, it was a place where people felt seen, respected, and appreciated. The success of the first Unity Table location exceeded all expectations, and it wasn't long before plans for expansion were underway. Dwayne and Jimmy worked tirelessly, ensuring that every new restaurant maintained the same high standards and core values. They personally visited each location before it opened, meeting with staff and sharing the story behind the brand. Every Unity Table is part of a bigger picture. Dwayne told a group of new hires during an orientation session, "When you work here, you're not just serving food, you're creating an experience, a memory, something people will carry with them long after they leave." Jimmy echoed his sentiments, adding, "And we're not just building restaurants, we're building communities. We want every person who comes through our doors to know they matter." Years later, Unity Table had grown into a nationally recognized brand, with locations across the country and a reputation for excellence that extended far beyond the dining experience. For Dwayne and Jimmy, the success of their venture wasn't just measured in revenue or accolades, it was measured in the lives they touched, the communities they uplifted, and the example they set for others in the industry. Together, they proved that a restaurant could be more than just a place to eat, it could be a place to connect, to inspire, and to make a difference. Unity Table became a legacy of change, a testament to the power of collaboration, and a shining example of what could be achieved when vision and values aligned. Love this content? Like the video and subscribe for more amazing updates. Share your thoughts below. Your support means to us.